Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sustainable Finance Podcast, brought to you by Ceres. I'm Paul Ellis, your host for these programs about developments in this fast-growing industry. The Dubai Green Fund is the funding pillar of the Dubai Clean Energy Strategy for 2050, including goals for net zero emissions and establishing Dubai as a hub for ESG and green economy investment in the MENA region. Dubai Green Fund is an impact investment firm set up by the Dubai government and anchored by Dubai Electricity and Water Authority. Joost Smulders is Chief Investment Officer at the Dubai Green Fund and my guest today on the Sustainable Finance Podcast. But before we start, I want to say a few words about our sponsor. I'm thrilled to talk about the important work Ceres is doing. Ceres is a nonprofit organization working with the most influential capital market leaders to solve the world's greatest sustainability challenges. Through their powerful networks and global collaborations of investors, companies, and nonprofits, Ceres drives action and inspires equitable market-based and policy solutions throughout the economy. To learn more, go to ceres.org/podcast. That's CERES.org/podcast. At Ceres, sustainability is the bottom line. Hello, Joost, and welcome to the Sustainable Finance Podcast.
Good morning, Paul. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast.
Yes, I'm very glad that you could join us today and take this time out of your busy schedule. You have an extensive background in impact investing, private equity, and investment banking, and have managed transactions of over $100 billion in the EU, MENA, and Asian capital markets. What attracted you to the Dubai Green Fund? And by the way, why don't you let our audience know what MENA stands for?
So MENA stands for the Middle East and North Africa region. And to come back to your question, so early on in my career, I was involved in some renewable energy transactions, so that always had my interest. And then when I was approached by Dubai Green Fund to be part of the founding team when Dubai Green Fund was created back in 2018, I was obviously immediately very enthusiastic because it was a chance for me to use my experience to actually make a real impact and to make some changes in society. And another aspect that appealed to me is that the government of Dubai always sets some very ambitious targets, and then they also actually make it happen. And I wanted to be a part of that.
That's great. Well, you're well on the way, right, to doing that. One of the things we're going to talk about today, right now, in fact, is the Dubai Clean Energy Strategy for 2050, which has set some ambitious goals for the next 30 years. Now, I know there's three distinct parts to this process that you and I have discussed, and a couple of projects within them that are currently being funded as part of that strategy. So please give our listeners an update on those projects that are under funding and the strategy as a whole, please.
Yeah, so maybe to start with the beginning. So the Dubai Green Fund was set up as one of the funding pillars for the Dubai Clean Energy 2050 strategy. Now, that strategy was actually updated recently, almost a year ago now, at the COP26, to now aim for net zero by 2050. Previously, it had been 70% clean energy production by 2050, but now it's 100% clean energy production and the aim of net zero. And that announcement was also made in the context of UAE actually hosting the Conference of Parties COP28 in the UAE in 2023.
Can I interrupt? I'm sorry, I want to interrupt you for a second. You just said 100%, right? Not 50%, 100%.
100%, that's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I was hearing that correctly. Go ahead.
So 100%. So that's an ambitious target, and the UAE was actually the first country in the MENA region. So here we have MENA again to make this net zero commitment as well, which was then followed by a couple of other countries shortly after the announcement.
So now let's move on to these programs that are already underway as part of this funding process. What are those, and how is that going?
Yeah, so I'll mention two different types of projects today. So the first is on the supply side initiative. So this is about clean energy generation. So Dubai launched the Mohammed bin Rashid solar park, which is a 5 gigawatt solar park, which is actually the largest single site solar park, which is based on the IPP, the independent power producer model, where the utility company will tender the project in phases to the market, and then developers, they can submit bids, and the best bid is chosen to develop that phase. Now, DGF has invested in the last two phases of this Mohammed bin Rashid solar park. So phase 4 is actually a CSP, concentrated solar power project, with also some PV aspect to it, 950 megawatts in total. And the interesting aspect about this project is that it actually provides a thermal energy storage as well. So energy can be stored for 15 hours. So that actually allows the project to also basically provide some base load to the grid, and not only produce power at the time that the sun is shining in the middle of the day. So that's phase 4. That's CSP is a more expensive technology. So this is about a $4 billion project. So it's a very large project. Phase 5, this is only PV. This is a 900 megawatt project, which I think it's about $550 million kind of project size. And the interesting aspect of this project is that it achieved, at the time of signing the PPA in 2019, it achieved the record low tariff, actually for the 5th consecutive time, of, I think it was 1.69 cents per kilowatt hours, which is just under $17 per megawatt hour. Setting again the standard, and also benefiting from obviously the high solar irradiance that is available in the MENA region, and particularly in the UAE.
Now, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you again, because there's a couple of terms that you've used that I think it would be helpful for our audience to hear again. And that's, the first one is PPA. Explain to our listeners what a PPA is and how it works.
So PPA is a power purchase agreement, which is the agreement between the project company and the utility company that governs the sale of the renewable energy to the utility company. And that is at a agreed volume and price that gives certainty to all the project parties. Okay,
now you also mentioned that the storage capacity of at least part of this solar project now is up to 15 hours of storage capacity. Now, what has to happen? Let's say that we're 12 hours into that 15-hour time frame, and now there's power needed at some part of the grid. How does it get from the storage facilities at the solar park to the grid and then to the users at the end? How does that process work?
Wait 1 second. Energy efficiency switches off the light here as well.
There's a good example of it right there, right?
Yeah.
That's all right.
Exactly. Yeah. No, so effectively in the CSP technology, and I'm not the technical expert, just for clarity, but maybe the easy way to explain it is that the solar energy is directed at a central tower, and the central tower is filled with a salt called molten salt, and effectively the heat from the sun is heating up this sand, and that's what's storing therefore the energy, and then that heat can be used to power turbines to then use that heat as and when required, and obviously that will then approximately for 15 hours the heat is kept there and can then be used when needed.
And then it is distributed through the grid that is connected to the solar park, right, to wherever it's needed and being used.
Exactly.
Great. Okay. So now there's another project, right, that's part of this early phase of funding. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Maybe if I may just add one more point to the previous.
Please do.
To the previous project. So At the moment, Dubai, with the current operational phases of the Mohammed bin Rashid Solar Park, about 11.5% or almost 12% of the energy in Dubai is already produced now by solar power. That will increase to about 14% by the end of the year. Once the whole 5 gigawatt park is operational, that will be approximately 25% of the power in Dubai. So that already makes a big contribution towards the ultimate goals in 2050. But we're already quite early in achieving some ambitious targets there.
Okay, well that's good, right? Because you are planning to expand your green economy in Dubai dramatically going forward, and the other project that you're going to tell us about now is part of that, right?
Yeah. So the other projects. So our other focus is on energy efficiency. So this is on the demand side management, so actually reducing the energy consumption in the first place. So DGF invested, for example, in 2 projects with Dubai airports. To save energy and water. And that involved, for example, replacing, I think it was almost 150,000 light bulbs with LED lighting, upgrading all of the cooling and chiller systems, the AC systems. There was a small supply side element as well by adding some rooftop solar to the airport as well. And this allows the airport to save up to 25 to 30% of their energy and water consumption at absolutely no cost to them as a building owner, because an investor like, and in this case DGF, would fund all the required investment for this project, and then the repayment of the investor is from the actual savings that are typically guaranteed by the contracting company who will implement these measures. We call them ESCO companies, energy saving companies. Or energy service companies. They will guarantee these savings, and that will be used to repay the investment. So that provides a very attractive model to any building owner of saving energy without any cost at all to themselves.
They have zero cost savings, energy efficiency savings. That's quite a process. I wish more infrastructure companies in the U.S. and other places in the world would adopt that kind of a model. Are you planning to expand that as you learn from this particular project?
So yes, we are always encouraging more building owners to go with energy and water efficiency initiatives. It is actually surprisingly hard to convince them, even though there is a zero cost, and it would really be a no-brainer. And in addition, it also provides additional comfort into the building, because normally the upgrade of cooling systems makes the environment more comfortable, and also the air quality improves. So really, I'm hoping that more companies and building owners would go ahead and also implement these initiatives. And commenting on your point about the US, actually, my understanding is that there is actually quite an active ESCO market in the US as well. I don't know all the details because we are not active in the US market. But I think it is one of the countries where there are at least some initiatives, as far as I'm aware. So that's good, and hopefully also the US can keep on expanding on that.
Well, I think they are, and one example that I'm aware of in New York City is the Bloomberg Tower, which gets all of its clean energy, and the whole building runs on clean energy from solar arrays on the roof of storage buildings in the boroughs around New York City, and so that all of that is arranged, as you said, through the grid. So that's one good example of a building in New York City that many people recognize, and I certainly hope that this whole idea keeps growing in popularity, and I encourage you to use this podcast program to get the word out to all kinds of building owners in Dubai, especially, and even beyond that, if it makes sense. So, please
absolutely,
do.
No, we will for sure do that.
Great. All right. So now, many U.S. and European investors are unaware of the tremendous opportunities that are available in the Islamic economies, particularly when it comes to fixed income strategies. How and where can they learn more about this topic?
Yeah, so there is actually a lot of activity in the green bond and the green sukuk space for international investors. And maybe I should explain that. So sukuks,
please do.
they are bonds, but structured according to the Islamic finance principles. And often that means that they are backed by assets, giving some security to the investors. And in the last year, in the UAE alone, there have actually been several issuers coming to the market with either a green bond or a green sukuk. And I'm talking about banks, at least 2 banks that I'm aware of, a district cooling company, a real estate and mall operator company. And actually, there's also one solar project that was refinanced with a solar project bond, basically providing investors the opportunity to directly invest in a solar project by providing the capital to this project. And all these bonds or sukuks, they are supported by a green framework, and that sets out all the policies and approaches that the company or the issuer has towards green and impact investing and what the use of proceeds are. And those frameworks, they are then typically also reviewed by what they call a second party opinion, which is an external consultant that reviews the framework and then basically gives their opinion about it. So that gives investors also some comfort as to how green or how impactful the particular capital raise or capital deployment is.
Yes, and I know that in the U.S. and in the EU markets, during this surge in green bond issuance in recent years, one of the things that people are concerned about is the elements of the bond contract that refer to the use of proceeds, where sometimes it's use of proceeds away from green projects at the same time that other use of proceeds within the bond issuance are directed at green projects. So what you're saying is there's a third-party reviewer in this situation that looks at all of that.
Yes, there is. But of course, and this is a bigger issue in the global markets, but there are, I call it, different shades of green. Obviously, not every bond or every sukuk is as green as the other.
Right.
Sometimes we see that only a percentage of the proceeds is actually used for green purposes, and the rest is used for real estate, for example. Whereas other bonds, then the full proceeds are used for green purposes. So there are differences, and of course, that should come forward from these frameworks and from these opinions. But it's also obviously up to the investor to do their diligence and to select those issuers that are the most committed to green and impact, and basically have the biggest results for every dollar that is invested in these instruments.
Great. Well, we've covered just a very few topics. There's certainly a lot more information about what you're doing with the Dubai Green Fund, and a lot more interest, I know, among investors to learn more about what you're doing and what other asset managers and investors are doing in the MENA countries. But for the moment, where can Sustainable Finance Podcast listeners go online to learn more about the Dubai Green Fund, and how can they contact you with questions about the topics that we discussed in today's episode?
So we have a website, dgf.ae. So that's where the listeners can find more information. I can be found on LinkedIn, or my office can also be reached by sending an email to info@dgf.ae. And more than happy to receive questions or to respond to any inquiries of potential investment opportunities for the Dubai Green Fund.
Terrific. Well, thanks again to Joost Smulders, Chief Investment Officer at the Dubai Green Fund, and to our sponsor, the Ceres Accelerator for Sustainable Capital Markets. The Ceres Accelerator is a center of excellence within Ceres that aims to transform the practices and policies that govern capital markets to reduce the worst financial impacts of the climate crisis. For more information, go to ceres.org/accelerator. That's CERES.org/accelerator. And to our listeners, join us again next week for another episode. I'm Paul Ellis, and this is the Sustainable Finance Podcast.